So I heard a couple of times how personal the story was for you about your daughter. So could you maybe start talking about that?
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
like to hear it from the source.
Well, yeah, this film kind of started, I had an idea of using emotions as characters. And around that time, my daughter was 11. And she was going through a pretty big change, as a lot of people do, you know, from being a goofy little active kid to being more quiet and more serious. And as a parent, I kind of was like, hey, wait a minute, I like the goofy little kid. I mean, you don't have any choice about it. And it's all good. It should happen, right? People should grow up, and she's becoming a wonderful adult. But I still sort of struggled with letting go of the little kid. And that sort of gem of the idea, that observation of that difficulty in my life, seemed to echo with other folks I was working with, like Ronnie Del Carmen and Josh Cooley. And so that kind of became the core of the idea, watching the difficulty that a parent deals with of letting go of their children as they grow up.
Did you talk with her about her emotions while working on the movie?
A little bit, but you know, the funny thing is, like, so often kids don't want or are not able to talk about it. They don't really understand it. And actually, that's, now that the film has come out, I mean, it's been really gratifying because a lot of folks have said, watching the film really helped unlock that barrier to talking about emotions and feelings. Because, like, man, you want to make a little boy squirm, is like, ask him, how do you feel about, like, they hate that, right? But when you watch the movie and you see this block of a guy with fire coming out of his head who's yelling, it's funny, and I can relate to that. And so it becomes a much easier discussion to have, which is pretty cool. Anyway, I guess all that to say, my daughter was not very self-aware at that age. So it was mostly me and the other guys at work commiserating about our own rough childhoods and taking ourselves back to that time.
Did she at least like the movie? Did you see it?
Oh yeah, she loved it. Yeah.
Talking about your own emotions, I'm sure you have your own core memories. Could you maybe, you surely have one about Pixar Studio, working at Pixar, so could you maybe one special memory?
A lot of them, and this we actually used in the film. There was this guy, Joe Ranft, who was one of the founding members of the place, and he was our head of story on Toy Story. He's since died in a car crash. So we have all these amazing, really funny memories of Joe that are now kind of tinged with this sadness because of the loss of him. So, and like I say, we sort of used that observation as an element of the film, that memories that we have had in the past and the way we felt about them are affected by where we are now in time. Anyway, not to get too sad about it, but Joe would often, he once got these teeth, I think they're called Billy Bob teeth, and they're like really big, crooked teeth that make you look like you're from the back hills or something. He had a whole character that he would do called Chucky. He would put the teeth in, and he'd have this southern accent, and he would have these amazing, weird stories of where he was over the weekend, or, you know, so most of my core memories are about people.
And I also heard about how you formed the emotions, sadness is a tear, and disgust is broccoli. So what would your disgust look like?
Yeah, I don't know, because I actually kind of like broccoli, but in the logic of the film, I think we've been saying that all of our emotions look kind of similar. Like my disgust would probably look similar to your disgust, but my disgust might have glasses and, you know, longer head or something to try to look a little bit like me.
And also, you're from Minnesota, like Riley moved here, I guess. So what was that like for you?
Well, I moved here when I was much older, so after college. Actually, I moved to California to go to Cal Arts, which is it was an animation school, still is. But when I was in 5th grade, so about Riley's age, 11, my family picked up and moved to Denmark. So from Minnesota to Denmark, I didn't even understand the language, I didn't know what was going on, and that was, of course, right at the time when you were starting to become aware of, oh, it matters what I wear, you know, and how I talk to people, and it's sort of a rough time for me. So I felt like that was a good symbol of growing up, which is what we were looking for in the film, is that idea of moving. Seems to really resonate with people.
So later I'm going to talk with Martin Sen, who moved from Switzerland
Oh, good.
to San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
You have a lot of international people here, so how is working here with...
It's great. I mean, Pixar is this real melting pot of not only different international sensibilities and things, but even culture. I think the fundamental building blocks of Pixar were artists and I was going to say technologists, but I'm not sure if that's even really a word. At any rate, people who are into technology, almost scientists, I guess, because in the 90s, when Pixar was really forming in the 80s, you had to basically had a master's degree in computer science just to turn on a computer, right? So it was necessary to have this collaboration between these two, because the technology was so complex. That was your life study. And same with art, it's so deep, and it was very few people who could do both. So it's internationally kind of similar, where you have all these different perspectives, people coming from very different backgrounds and bringing new ideas to everything we do. It's really a fascinating place to work. It's a very accepting place. Like, everybody is able to speak and bring ideas in. It doesn't mean we use everything, but they're all part of the discussion, and it really shapes the films.
Going back to the movie, what was the hardest part of the brain to kind of visualize?
Is it cheating to say all of it? We had headquarters. We knew kind of what that needed to be. It was like a kind of a control room. We knew we didn't want it to be too science fiction-y, because as you describe it, it sounds a little bit like Star Trek or something like this. It's like a spaceship. But the rest of the mind world we reinvented several times over, dozens of times, trying to figure out, should it be like a spiral that descends down into the subconscious, or should it be pillars with different... There's all sorts of different ideas that we came up with before we landed on this, this idea of these islands of personality and whatnot.
Is there something that you had to cut that you would have liked to see in the movie?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff. There's one bit that was really fun where, you know how, like, if you listen to music, it's meaningful, right? It speaks to you. Like a dog, it's probably just noise to them. But we figured, well, there's probably a part of the mind that understands and makes sense out of music. Let's go there. So joy and sadness then went in, and they stopped speaking words. They sounded like a violin and a flute or something, and they became music. It was really cool. But it was a little similar to abstract thought, so we ended up cutting that. But it would have been fun.
Yeah. And everybody knows about the Easter eggs you write in every movie, so could you maybe tell us where we should look for them? Maybe a scene or something?
Yeah, well, okay, so we always do this sort of thing of like little tribute to other films, like the Pizza Planet truck. That's in there 3 times in this movie. And I'll tell you this, they are in memories that you'll see but I'm not going to tell you. If you can find all 3 of them, the producer, Jonas Rivera, will give you $50. So,
I didn't. So.
Oh, yeah, okay. We also have a tradition now of putting in characters from the next film. So like in Monsters, there's a bit where Sully looks at Nemo, which was the film coming out after Monsters. This film, we did a little tribute to The Good Dinosaur. This is a section where you'll see a character from the next film. There's all sorts of inside jokes, like, well, we have 3 different characters from Ratatouille that show up in varying places. We have A113, which is a number of a classroom where I went to school with Brad Bird and Andrew and everybody. So all sorts of inside jokes.
Speaking of common themes, you have The Good Dinosaur and also a couple of sequels. How do you manage to keep the balance between new stuff and sequels?
Yeah, we try to keep it to about, I think John's thought was to do 2 original films to 1 sequel. As it turns out, you can't really control it that well. It's like, where are the ideas, and what kind of, even as you try to plan it, some films just come together quicker than other films, and so you're kind of at the mercy of the story gods a little bit. But we do try to, every sequel we do has its own set of very unique challenges. In some ways, I feel like they're more difficult than the original ones because you can't just give people the same thing they saw before, right? It's got to be new, it's got to feel fresh, and they're going to the theater because they loved the first one, but they don't actually want the first one. They want something different, and the whole world and the characters have been designed for the first one. So as a storyteller, they're very difficult, very challenging. But it's all part of the fun of what we do here. So yeah, it's something we're definitely aware of and try to keep that balance going.
And speaking of the future, video games are trying with virtual reality, Oculus Rift and this stuff. Is Pixar interested in something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all those things we're looking at. For us, our roots really go back to linear storytelling. So the idea of, and this is intriguing, and don't get me wrong, I think it could be very interesting to like tell a story, but let the viewer kind of affect where it goes, you know. So you get to a decision point, and should Carl float his house off or not, what does the viewer say? You know, that would be a very interesting. I can't even quite get my head around how you would produce that because you'd have so many different versions of the movie. But anyway, that nonetheless would be very interesting. And we keep looking at different things, different technologies, and really, how could we use them? They're like new toys. When you see some of this stuff, you're like, ooh, how can we play with that and make it something that could be interesting to the audience?
Last question. You told the story about Switzerland. Could you maybe repeat it for the camera, since Swiss people love to hear?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, yeah, my family and I were in Gundewald, I think it was last year. We took the cog rail train up to the highest mountain, and what surprised me was like the last third of it was in the dark. You were in this tunnel, which they had bored through the mountain, and then finally when you come out, it's like blinding white because there's snow everywhere, even in the middle of summer. It's beautiful, beautiful. I think someday I want to be plopped down somewhere randomly in Switzerland. Don't tell me where I am. I'm just going to wander around for a couple of weeks. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.